Hello there, it's Brian here with the North American Guitar at Winter NAMM 2020, and right now we're here in the Red Collection, and it's a just beautiful display you guys have put on.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it's three guys. We are the kind of the crazy fringe of guitar making, but we decided to work together, and so each of us does very different things, and we thought, well, we need a unifying theme. So how about the color red? So we called it the Red Collection. So all the guitars here contain in one way or another a red element or are red. It's been very well received. It's great to be here.
I mean, it's such an amazing spot, and it's also really inspiring just to see guitars that have been purposefully made for the show, and there's so much intention and so much unity between everything that's going on in this space. It just feels like such a powerhouse for just the wonderful things that you all do, and it's really lovely. I mean, getting straight into it, this is just a beautiful piece, and I love how subtle the red detailing on it is, just as a way in.
Well, this wood is not red, but it's reddish, and you have the red bone nut and red veneer in the neck. This is kind of a part of my hybrid line of models, basically deconstructing the guitar where the parts are held together by an aluminum frame. The special thing about this one is the hot headstock. I always wanted to have like the straight silhouette where the lines of the neck are continued all the way up. Without a break, but then the tuners required to be outside, and then I figured out a ways to tilt the tuners, and the effect is you can see that the neck is twisted. It's called the twist. It's like a propeller, and then I found out that early Porsches they didn't have coil springs because they weren't stable enough. For whatever reason, they had what's called a torsion bar, which is a straight bar that twists. And the unintended benefit is that this headstock is a lot stiffer than traditional headstocks. Anyway, it's pretty hard to make because you kind of figure out, how the angle for each tuner, but it works tremendously well. This is eucalyptus burl, Jera, and it's a neck through with the aluminum frame uniting these pieces. With this thing you can adjust the upper part, so if you play down here or you play up here, you can adjust it to your body. It's got my signature pickups that I call bone tops. In this case, this is coral. So it's a different kind of material, but it's in keeping with the texture and the color scheme of the instrument. Very warm sound, very long sustained.
Well, I've had so much of a just wonderful experience with your bone top pickups and Totem Series guitars, and they're just really, really wonderful, and I love that you make them in-house, but I also like the eclectic mix that you have of those and this sort of wealth of vintage and just particular pickups, but that you always seem to be able to match the sets in a really inspiring way that just yields so much variation with everything.
I came up with the idea because I was making my guitars, buying standard pickups, putting them in, and it just was lacking something. In the sense of it needs something special, especially with the colors.
Yeah.
So when I found the material, the colored bone for the tops, the bobbins, I went wild. And Lindy Fralin helped me he designed the architecture. I told him what I wanted, and I asked him, to make good pickups, how long does it take? He says, well, it takes at least 10 years until you know what you're doing. So I thought, I'll let him do the technical part, I'll do the aesthetics, and they turned out great.
Well, it's become such a distinctive part of all of the builds, and it's something that I really love seeing. And yeah, it's great seeing them just on such a huge variation of silhouettes among everything else. And this is, yeah, absolutely exquisite. I really can't wait to spend some time with it.
I pretty much make only one-offs, so each guitar is individual. And I don't approach building like drawing. I draw sketches to get ideas, but I don't have blueprints, because as I work something like this, I'm figuring it out as I go. So at the beginning, I may not know what it looks like at the end, but it's more like a painter works or a sculptor. You know, you have an idea and then you work towards that. But at a certain point, the work that you've done determines how it's going to continue. And it's a really interesting process that way.
And it certainly yields really interesting results. It's, yeah, a wonderful thing. And speaking of interesting results, there's something really special over in that corner of the booth that I'd love to go and take a look at. So over here we have just an absolutely jaw-dropping presentation, and this is just so perfect for the situation. What was the process behind building? Did you know when you were making the guitar that you were going to do all of this around it, or was it?
Yeah, I had intended. I've been making these. I call them pieces, art pieces, for a while now. This is the 5th one, and we had them at previous NAMM shows actually also. It's to give the guitar its proper frame in a way, to integrate it into a piece that, you know, you can hang on your wall or have in your living room, that goes more even into the art direction. And the idea behind this one is, because of the red theme, looking at that, I thought, well, and then Adriano mentioned the red line that we as humanity are approaching in terms of our environment. Made me think of the red tide, which is what happens when you have fertilizer runoff into the sea. Algae bloom, they suck up all the oxygen and everything dies. And they have that in the Gulf of Mexico all the time. So this one is called the red tide. Now the guitar contains parts like, in this upper corner you see dead crab parts, the residue of the animals that used to live there. And on the opposite side, almost like the replacement, the plastic fish from a fish restaurant. I work a lot with recycled materials, found objects, found materials. This is all stuff that I picked up either on a beach walk or off the street, found maybe in some cases like these dolls in at the flea market. And so it's just kind of a riff on the idea of what's our impact on the environment, very loosely. So when I made this, I started off with the guitar and then worked the piece around it. And so you can have that in your living room. You can pick up the guitar, and the light's not great here, so you can see a little better like this. These are also bone top pickups with, in this case, acrylic tops, because I wanted to have like the red flare. And again, here you can see the marine life, the plastic life, and the residue of our civilization, the technical parts.
Well, one thing that I always love, and it's almost like a secret cameo or like a little, I don't know, like a subtle nod in the guitars, is I've noticed that you're using a lot of components from watch mechanisms, and I've seen those even tucked into just little corners of a guitar, but there almost always seems to be a bit of that as well.
A lot of what I see is ideally an art piece should work on many levels. If you're far away, the large parts should speak to you, attract your attention. And then as you come closer, you should be able to have layers of discovery. And I've been always fascinated when I look at watch parts, particularly old ones, before they had all the machinery that we have now. The intricacy and the tiny smallness of them, you know, you look at them, you almost need a microscope. And it's a screw. So putting objects like that with a different scale in there makes it something that you can just kind of dive in. It does not get old quick. And also it adds through that also a layer of meaning, of interest. So I tried to do that in my work, to have these different aspects of it. It's like the aging process. When you look at some of the old Gibsons, they've aged wonderfully because of the nitro and the perishable nature of the materials. Whereas other guitars with the high gloss lacquer, you get a ding in there, that's pretty much it. It's ugly now. So to me, getting old and aging in a way is also something I integrate. I use a lot of cut-offs. I don't throw pieces away when I make a guitar. I keep them. And I'll show you on this series of guitars. This is the Totem X Series that I started making. I made the first one, this is the X2. I made the first one when I still had my workshop in LA. I ran the LA Guitar Garage repair shop. Worked with a lot of the musicians here, the guitarist scene. And that was a great way to garner experience in what they need. And so one of my regrets is that a lot of my instruments are out of reach for most musicians. And musicians are having an increasingly hard time making a living at that. So I wanted to do an instrument that is still in a price range that is attainable, but that still has that, what I do.
Yeah.
So this one, for instance, is the Totem X are simply an approach. They're not as elaborate with objects and everything like that, but these are all cut-offs. You can see the shapes repeating themselves, kind of like there's a rhythm there. That's because they're all pieces that were from building guitars. I save those and then I integrate them into a new top, in this case. It's a wood base basically, and then they're glued on and they're sealed with a resin coat that unifies them.
That's absolutely beautiful, and it's such again, the versatility that you have in this set of pickups is a great example of building something that's very much for the player. And I think it's not necessarily easy to get distracted by aesthetics, but it definitely, when it's so striking, you maybe don't necessarily think about, or as someone looking at the guitar, you don't necessarily consider the playability because you're so busy looking at it. But the thing that's absolutely just blown me away with your guitars is they've been some of my favorite playing guitars that we've had, like the Totem series. To quote a specific example, 3-ball with the 2 gold foils. Tonally, it had a lot of what I look for in a guitar because I love the gold foil thing, and the choice of Jason Loller's pickups was just perfect for the guitar. The redwood and the neck profile, so much came together on that guitar, and when I sat down with it, I just felt very inspired and very moved by it, and it was so much more than just an aesthetic thing. But then you put the guitar back on the wall and you lose another 10 minutes just sort of staring at all of the detail and all of the work behind it. But
you're making a few good points there, I think. When I started doing what I'm doing, there was a lot of blowback in the sense of these can't be good instruments. But through my work in the LA Guitar Garage, I had 3 principles. One is it's got to sound good. It's got to be very playable, and it has to be reliable. A lot of my customers were touring musicians, so I saw what came back after the tour. Anyway, out of that, I thought, okay, I can standardize certain parts. I'm using not bone top pickups, but I'm using traditional combinations. Maybe a little odd at first sight, but this is a wonderful match. It's a TV Jones in the neck, and a Lindy Fralin in the bridge. And it covers a whole range of sounds. So it allows me to make a guitar that is really also in the sense of, you know what you're getting. You know, each of my guitars is very individual. So the sounds are also individual. They're very different sometimes. These are more consistent in what the output is. And in terms of having to choose, you can go and you can say, well, I like this top better, or like here's another one. It's the same one, but it's got a different top.
And that's a great segue over to this instrument, because this, again, is in keeping with the theme and a really just beautiful thing once again.
Yeah. So you see it's the same neck pickup configuration. It's the same alder back with a maple neck feature. It's a working instrument.
Yeah.
And but it's also your individual unique piece. And so because as a guitar builder, you really want to see your guitars on stage. You want to hear them played. You know, people say Leo Fender was a genius because he invented the Stratocaster. That's not true. The Stratocaster was invented by Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, by those guys, because they saw an opportunity. Yes, he provided the platform for them to be able to, you know, make the sounds they had in their head hearable to other people. So it's this interplay between a builder and a musician, and that's where it gets really interesting, because on some of my guitars I've had musicians who said, I've played stuff here that I've never played before. That's the greatest compliment that I can get, in a way, you know. So that connection needs to be there, and that's why I'm really also interested in making guitars for people who actually are working musicians.
And it's something I've loved seeing on a personal level, just on the showroom floor, when people pick up one of your guitars for the first time. And it may be because the shape is, I suppose, less typical. I think that informs the direction you go in a lot of the time when you start playing the guitar. And I think something that has that kind of echo of the culture and the history of the instrument, but still manages to completely throw you in a different direction, is just, I would suppose, what the boutique guitar world's all about.
Yeah.
And being able to see people pick these guitars up and just be taken on a journey in real time, and sort of sit there in that kind of daze when you're just inspired and moved by the instrument, is really wonderful to see, and something that honestly I've seen so consistently with your guitars and in the hands of all sorts of people.
That's a great compliment, thanks.
No, I mean, we absolutely love what you do, and last year was a great year. We saw some really phenomenal instruments come through. I have a feeling this year is going to be all the better.
It started out pretty well, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's a great way to kick it off. It's been a real pleasure to meet you, and a real pleasure talking about all of these instruments. And for more information on the finest luthier-built instruments, please do subscribe to this channel. It'll be where you can find all of our NAMM coverage. If you want to know more about Spalt instruments, please don't hesitate to get in touch.